Welcome to the Grow Strong Leaders podcast. I'm your host, Meredith Bell, and I interview business leaders who are committed to their own growth and the development of everyone on their team. If you enjoy my podcast, be sure to subscribe and rate it on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Grow Strong Leaders podcast. I'm your host, Meredith Bell. And it's not easy to create a strong, positive culture, and it's even more challenging to sustain it for 10 years. That's exactly what my guest today has done. And instead of resting on his accomplishments, he continues to raise the bar for himself and his company. I'm very excited to welcome as my guest today, Dan Turner, President and CEO of Xperigo. Dan, welcome to my show.
Thanks very much, Meredith. Happy to be here.
I'm just so excited to have you, and I want to express a special thank you to our wonderful friend, Craig Dowden, who introduced you to me and recommended you as a perfect example of the theme of my podcast, Grow Strong Leaders, because you focus so much on your own growth and growing the people in your company. So I can hardly wait to share your experiences and insights with my audience today. First, let me tell them a little bit about you. Dan has been president and CEO of Xperigo for 4 years. He's also served as COO and vice president of business development. Since joining the company in 2014, Dan has been instrumental in establishing Xperigo as a leading provider of customer experience management solutions to the automotive sector of North America. With his people-first philosophy, Dan has placed significant emphasis on cultivating a high-performance culture, which has resulted in the company being the 3-time consecutive winner of the prestigious award called Canada's Most Admired Corporate Cultures. Before joining Xperigo, Dan held senior leadership positions in both sales and client services at other large companies, where he managed strategic relationships with Fortune 500 companies like Apple, General Motors, and Netflix. He successfully secured over $500 million in new business over his 12-year sales career. So, Dan, let's start out telling us what exactly does Xperigo do, and then talk about how you got started with the company.
Sure. Well, what Xperigo does is we are for lack of a better term, we are the business-to-business arm of the Canadian Automobile Association. So in 1992, all of the automotive manufacturers started providing roadside assistance with their new vehicle warranties. And CA created this entity called Xperigo to service those contracts so that we could provide those services to the automotive OEMs. We've continued to evolve from there, especially over the last 7 or 8 years, where we're providing services beyond just roadside assistance. We do a lot of like tier 1 and tier 2 customer support. We provide a host of services to other automotive companies as well. So we've really diversified our business over the last 8 or 9 years. Which has given us, a lot more stability and obviously a bigger pool to, a bigger market to work within.
So how did you get started?
How I got started. So for that, I've got to go all the way back to very early in my career when I was 18 years old, and I started my career right out of high school driving tow truck for the Canadian Automobile Association, and I did that for a better part of a decade. And then from there, I just continued to, work my way through the ranks and joined other companies. And I got the opportunity just a little over 10 years ago to rejoin this company when a recommended job came through LinkedIn. And I saw that they were looking for a vice president of business development at Xperigo. And here was an opportunity to return to the organization that I started at almost 30 years before. So obviously I did that and I've been with Xperigo for the last 10 and a half years.
Well, you had a dream early on about the kind of position you ultimately wanted to have, right?
That's correct.
I would love for you to talk about that because sometimes I think we can dream too small, but you allowed yourself to dream big.
Yeah, I think it's very difficult for people to dream big because sometimes it just seems completely out of touch with reality or seems impossible. And I would have said that, that was the case for me as it related to this goal of becoming a CEO one day. I did not go to college or university at that point in time. I still haven't. But I remember reading a story when I was still working at, back in the day when I was still a tow truck driver, reading a story about an individual by the name of Robert Darbonnet. And Mr. Darbonnet, it was a story about him who he had started as a tow truck driver when he was young at CA Quebec. And he rose through the ranks, became the CEO of CA Quebec, and ultimately became the article was about him being the new CEO and president of AAA in the US because he had dual citizenship. I remember reading that story and it really resonated with me because I thought, well, if that individual was able to do it, what's stopping me from being able to do that? And right then I said to myself, if there's somebody, I used him as my mentor, my example. And I just realized that if I pushed hard enough, had a goal and pursued it, that it was possible. And that's right then when I said, I'm going to go after this. And, it took 30 plus years to get there, but it felt good that entire time to have that lofty goal. And I never knew, even when I became a VP of a company, I never knew that I would, eventually achieve it. But I just kept pushing towards it. And, lo and behold, in 2014, or actually 2019, my dream came true.
I'm curious along the way, holding on to that vision, and yet along the way, not necessarily having everything go smoothly, I would guess. What are some of the most important, I'd say, leadership lessons that you learned is as part of that journey, and especially that kept you going in spite of whatever setbacks or challenges you might have faced?
Yeah, and there are plenty of those, Meredith. So, it's not a linear progression to this role. It was a crooked line to get there for sure. But you know, for the mistakes that I made some bad decisions in my career along the way, taking the wrong job or doing the wrong thing within the role that I was in, and just making sure that I learned from that, so that the next step that I would take was something where I would be better positioned and I wouldn't fall prey to those mistakes again. Uh, I believe that I've always been a big believer in just being really bold and taking risks. I'm not one to sit back and kind of let the world happen to me. I'm willing to hang myself out there and in the good and the bad, because sometimes take a risk and it pays off, and other times it might not. And but my experience has been it pays off more times than it didn't. And I just think that if I hadn't have been as bold in the different approaches that I took and the different chances that I took, I would not be here today. I think the other thing is persistence. I just, I'm a big believer in you only fail if you quit. If you keep moving and keep going, then you haven't given up, and it's still within your ability to achieve it. So that was kind of my mindset through my entire career. When things got bad, I would just double down and buckle down a little more and try to learn from what was I was experiencing at the time. And I went through some really hard times in my career where it didn't feel like that dream was ever going to get any closer to me. But it was about just fighting through those and continuing to do the things that I knew were the right things to do, to continue to be authentic to myself. And I just kept fighting, and eventually you find your way out of those not so great times and into better times. And that really to me was I would say the secret to my success, is how I got to where I am.
You're mentioning the risk taking and being bold and the persistence. To me, underlying those is a level of confidence that you must have had about yourself and your abilities. Can you talk about where that confidence came from?
Yeah, I think confidence is key. And I know I always joke about this with people because my children, my two daughters, have always accused their dad of being a little too cocky. I like to think it's just being, I don't think overconfidence is too bad a thing, but I'd rather err on the side of being overconfident than not being confident enough. And that confidence came from, I wouldn't say it was always there for me when I was younger. I didn't have that confidence, but I got involved in sports at a young age. And that really shaped who I am today because, at some point, I think it was grade 7 or 8, I grew a lot, and next thing you know, I'm 6'1", and so I'm a bigger individual, and found out that I was good in a bunch of sports. Played baseball most of my life. Played basketball in high school. Was the quarterback of the football team in high school, and all of those things gave me the learning experiences of what leadership was all about, and that confidence took you a long way. And going into a game, like anything I do, I never expect to lose. You can ask anybody that knows me. I'm the most competitive guy that you're ever going to meet. And it comes from, that confidence that, I want to make sure that and it's true in business too. I like to win. I like to be on the winning side of a game, or in business, I like to be involved in things that feel like winning. And so you have to be confident. If you go into it without confidence, I don't know that you're going to meet your full potential.
Mhm.
I believe that every time that we, step on a court or a field or in the arena in business, that we're going to win. And more times than not, we do. And I think it's confidence that propels you towards that.
Great. Well, I would love for you to share the story of Apple because the research you did and then the success you had with that, I thought was an amazing story.
Yeah, one of my favorite events that took place in my life, and I've told this story many times to those around me because most people want to hear it. But being in a senior sales role and overseeing a large account like Apple, and Apple's a very secretive company. They don't let anybody from the outside really know what's going on, especially when they're about to launch a new product or a new service. And I just believe that, my job as being the account manager for that large account was to know as much about the organization as I could at all times. And so I spent a lot of time on the internet. The really cool thing about Apple back in the day was they had a lot of, real zealot like fans who, supported their products, very faithfully. And so there were a lot of forums online where people would be talking about their products and their computers and their graphics and all that kind of stuff. And I would browse through those. And one day I stumbled across some information that said that somebody thinks that they're going to get involved in the cell phone business. And, there was a lot of debate on how crazy that would be. Why would Apple do that? And I thought the same thing myself, but I kept paying attention. And one day, the individual in this forum produced a purchase order of electronic parts that had been purchased by Apple for some manufacturing company in Malaysia or something like that. And I thought, well, maybe there's something to this. And I still hadn't totally bought into the idea, but I thought there's a little bit of evidence. And here's, where you talk about being bold. I went to my boss and I said, the developers conference for Apple is coming up in January in San Francisco. I'd really like to be there because I think they may be announcing a new cell phone that they're going to market with. And so my boss asked me, like, why do you think that? And I shared that information with him, and he denied me to go. He said, I think Turner, you just want to go on a trip to California, which was true. But I pushed. I was persistent. I kept, bringing the topic up, and eventually he said, "Hey, for the few $1,000s that it'll cost to send you to California, go ahead." So I went there with an actual unsolicited proposal that I had prepared on how my company would support their new cell phone, and I attended the conference that day, the developers conference. I was literally sitting in the auditorium about 30 rows from Steve Jobs the day that he showed the iPhone to the world. So pretty exciting time in my career, a real milestone. It's the closest thing in business that I've seen to a rock show in my life. It was absolutely off the charts exciting. So I sat there and here he delivered the iPhone to the world. So my hunch was correct. Later that day, I drove up to Sacramento where the individuals who I dealt with, because Apple employees are not allowed to attend that conference. So I went up to Sacramento where the contacts that I interacted with were scheduled to have dinner with me. So we went out for dinner, and while I was in the middle of dinner, I plunked this 25-page proposal on how we would support their new iPhone. I didn't call it that because I didn't know the name yet, but and they were blown away. they were like, well, how did you even know that we were bringing an iPhone? This has been the biggest secret that Apple's been keeping. And, I showed, all I said to them is that, as their account manager, I keep close tabs on my client and I have ways of finding things out. And they were absolutely, just dumbfounded and really, really lots of smiles and lots of pats on the back. Like, that's incredible, man. About a month later, when they were looking to figure out how to launch the iPhone, obviously they were going to need a ton of customer service support when they did that. Normally, you would have to go through, a pretty involved request for proposal process. They did not do that for me and my company because of what the proactive approach that I had taken. They awarded us about $20 million worth of business like that, just because of the way that I had approached this. They were so impressed with how I was able to show up with an unsolicited proposal on the day that the iPhone got launched. So obviously that's one of my big career highlights. It helped to propel my career from there for sure. We went on to have great success with Apple in a number of areas, but you want to talk about a sales guy who was just in the right place at the right time, hearing the right thing, and it ended up resulting in a huge sale. It's a pretty special memory in my career.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations on that. And it had nothing to do with luck. You were proactive, as you said, in staying on top of what your client was up to and taking the initiative to really study, what they were all about, which led to all these various circumstances. That it's such a wonderful lesson in not just sales, but in business, and in life. You look for those opportunities, and the more you look for them, the more likely you are to find them. And that all of those qualities that you brought to bear in that situation, I see you bringing to Xperigo now as CEO. And this focus that you have on a high performance culture, it's interesting that you use that term. I would love for you to describe, what do you think of as culture, and what does a high performance culture look like?
Yeah, culture for me is just a way that you interact within the company. It's how business gets done. And we start with a set of values that we all need to share and embody and embed in the things that we do. And really that's the basis of culture. But the high performance piece comes in that, because if you have everybody that are aligned and everybody feels empowered to do the things they need to do, there's clearly, there's lots of evidence. I'm sure, Craig would have all kinds of scientific information that would back this up, but I've seen it in real life, which is, our company, we've done each year that our culture has gotten stronger, we've seen the ability to respond to challenges be much easier. And so that high performance is that because you've got an engaged team firing on all cylinders in alignment with what the goal is, and everybody wants to be successful. And so, for me, culture is, several years ago, we actually introduced it to our board of directors as one of our five cultural pillars, or one of our five strategic pillars.
Hmm.
Culture had never been a strategic pillar up until that point, but we feel that it's so important that we actually put it right in our strategic plans, because it's what drives the company. In fact, every year that we've been doing what we call the Engage survey, and it's a survey that gives us statistics and feedback on engagement at the team member level, but it also gives us a dashboard of all of the factors that feed into a strong culture. And one of the questions in that survey is, do you agree with this statement that the culture at Xperigo is critical to your performance in the job? And 91% of our team members have responded positively to that, to say that that's definitely the case. And I see it every day. I mean, the minute that somebody feels challenged, maybe overwhelmed, is getting stressed, and we've had a lot of that over the last 4 years, that's for sure. The first thing that myself or other leaders in the organization do is we let them know, hey, you're not alone. Let's go figure this out. We'll get through it. And that, I think, goes a long way, that we let we let everybody know that we all have each other's back. We're all in this together. Nobody fails by themselves, and we all win together. And so when you have that type of environment, you can just see in Meredith what I saw through, especially the beginning of the pandemic when we all thought that, originally we thought that in a few months this will all go away. And then we realized that that was not the case. And I remember, just personally, I remember being, pretty fearful for not only my health, but the health of, my family and friends, worried about the company because we were all working from home and we never had done that before. And so what is this, it was a scary time. And what I saw was the culture just actually lift the entire organization another level higher and showed a level of resilience and performance and persistence that I had not seen before. And I was actually in awe of it and trying to figure it out. And it was just something that was hard to believe when I saw it happening. And in fact, I only realized later in reflecting back on it that that's what we were going through was the culture kicking in to make sure that we had each other's back, both personally and professionally. And I think we would have had a really difficult couple of years in the beginning of the pandemic had that not taken place. But a lot of the challenges that other organizations were experiencing in the first couple of years of that pandemic, we did not. You talk about the Great Resignation, and people were leaving jobs in droves. Did not happen at my company. And this is what I mean by performance. We have individuals who, by any way you measure it, they probably should go and work somewhere else because they're getting big offers from other companies, especially through the Great Resignation period, and they didn't. And when I asked some of these individuals, why aren't you taking advantage of those opportunities? Because Meredith, we do something called stay interviews, really talking to A players to find out why are you here? Why do you stay here? And how can I keep you here? Some of the responses that we got were, you guys treat me so well that those other offers don't mean anything to me. And so, I think that is, shows us, that's a performance to me.
Absolutely. I love that. That's such a great testament to what you've created. I'm curious what the core values are.
Oh, you're going to make me recite them, Meredith? Okay, let's try. There's only 5 of them, so I should be okay. So the first one is pursue excellence, and we tried to keep them really simple because pursuing excellence is something we should all be doing every day, especially in our professional lives, but I would say personally as well. The other one is earn trust. So we want to make sure that everybody's out there, trying to gain the trust of the people around them by what I always say is don't give people a reason to not trust you. I mean, it's quite as simple as that. Know more. Always be striving to know more than you did yesterday, and that relates to not only yourself but those around you. Trying to educate those around you if you have information that you can share. Then there's going to be one I forget here. I know it just because I'm on the spot. But the other one is practice positivity. So we always want to make sure that we practice positivity. And originally, that value was have fun, but it didn't quite apply to what we were trying to convey with that value. So we changed it a couple of years ago to practice positivity. What we want people to do is, look, it's very easy in this world, especially over the last few years, to be negative, and it doesn't add any value to anybody or anything. So we wanted to say, like, come to work positive. No matter how bad things get, no matter how large the challenges are, let's stay optimistic, let's stay positive, let's interact positively with each other, and we'll find a way through it. And the fifth one's escaping me at the
Okay,
moment.
I wasn't trying to put you on the spot. I was
Okay.
genuinely curious, and it'll
Yeah.
probably come to you sometime while we're talking. But this practice positivity, I think, is so powerful because it's a way of seeing the world. Am I going to view this challenge as something difficult? But what if I see it as an opportunity instead? It's the whole thing of how we use words, how we use language to approach any situation that we face. So all of those are amazing. I'm curious, how did you come up with the values and how did you get buy-in for them from everybody in the company?
So we formed a bit of a committee in the very beginning to just think about what we want our values to be. And so there was a lot of input from leaders in the organization. And, some of them, I had some input into it as well. And then we circulated those to the entire company to get feedback on whether this resonated with everybody or not. And if it didn't, why didn't it? And what would resonate more? And so through a fairly comprehensive process. I feel that the goal was to make sure that everybody in the company had their fingerprints on it, because the buy-in is going to be so much stronger when everybody feels, right from that front level agent to me, feels like they've had a chance to contribute. And that's a key theme in our business, pretty much all the time. But that's what we did for the values. And so we came up with these 5 values, and we had to hone them a little bit, and write a little bit of description for each of them so everybody understands what they are. But then, once you have those values, and like I said, we kept it, only 5 2-word sentences. And then we had to make sure that they were put into practice. So what we started doing is, every quarterly town hall meeting that we have, the opening slide is our purpose, our vision, our mission, and our values, so that everyone understands how those connect. And we make sure that that's something that's being put in front of them at least every 3 months if their leaders aren't doing it. The other thing that we did is we created our performance our performance process each year. We do it twice a year, and in the performance reviews, we gauge everybody's performance in the organization by how they contributed to those values. So everybody in the organization has to do a self-assessment. That self-assessment is 5 categories, and it's the 5 values. And you have to write a little story on how you contributed to that value over the last half a year.
Mm.
Then you rate yourself out of 5. It goes to your manager, and then the manager does the exact same thing, writes how he thinks or she thinks that you contributed to those values, and scores you out of 5. And then there's a discussion that takes place. And we do that twice a year. And then on top of that, we have quarterly values champions, where through a platform that we have, everybody in the organization can submit kudos to other team members to say, gee, I just wanted to nominate Dan for earn trust, because Dan did this with my team. And so we keep all of these in this platform. And everybody, we as an executive team, we review those every quarter. And then based on how many nominations you get, and based on the feedback within those nominations, we will select a winner in each of the 5 categories. And at our quarterly town hall, I present those awards to those team members. We write a little blurb, we celebrate them, they get a certificate, and it gets recorded that they were a winner of that award. We also recognize this at the end of the year. We have our year-end party, and we have 3 big awards that we give out at the end of the year for 3 individuals in the organization that embodied those values the greatest. So we really promote it. Those values are in the DNA, and that's been the foundation. You mentioned at the top of the show that we've been doing this for 10 years, and that's been the foundation of it, is the values. And so now it's about, how do we take those values, because they're going to continue to be the core, but how do we continue to elevate from here?
I love all of that. What I appreciate for my listeners is the specificity of what you're doing. So you aren't just, saying them at a quarterly meeting. You're really helping people bring them to life and I love the way people can nominate others, and they are specific about what they've done. And then each person and their manager has to really think about, how have I applied this? So what you're helping them do is really keep it front of mind, that this is how we live here in this company. This is how we operate with each other and with our customers. I'm curious what your customer feedback is like, and retention.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously our customers are our clients within the automotive sector. So every year we put out a client satisfaction survey to each of our clients to give us feedback on basically every aspect of our business. We score really high. We always have. It's pretty consistent. I mean, there is a lot of focus and dedication to make sure that our customers are being served properly, and hopefully better than they can get anywhere else. I mean, that's always the goal. Our satisfaction scores are usually in the 85 to 90 range. We also, for some of our clients, we actually measure customer satisfaction. So their customers, we measure satisfaction of the services that we're delivering. And again, we're regularly in that 90 to 95 range from a customer satisfaction standpoint. So clearly there's a lot of, dedicated people. I mean, it's the old story, Meredith, right? If you have happy people that are servicing customers, they're going to service them well, right? And again, we're not perfect, but we try to maintain a high level of consistency, and we've been able to do that over the 10 years that I've been here in the organization. From an attrition standpoint, it's a market that doesn't change a lot, but we have. I can say this is that yeah, have we lost clients in the last 10 years? We've lost a couple, but we've gained far more. I think over the 10 years that I've been here, we've gained something like 38 new clients, and we've lost a single digit number, three or four, over that time period. And that's just really about market fluctuation. And the last several years have been challenging too. But we're a leader in this space. I'll give you one example of a client. Our first client in 1992, which is Subaru Canada, is still our client today. So in 32 years this summer, it'll be that client continues to remain with us, and we have many clients with tenure that are in the 10 to 20 year range.
Well, that speaks obviously to the quality of service that you are committed to providing. This award that you have won 3 times, and I would love for you to talk about that, because it's significant that you can only win it, every 3 years. And so you've won it's a span of 10 years. And so talk about what the requirements are for that award, because it's significant when we're talking about culture, and what does it take to be honored with that, because it's a pretty competitive space, right?
It is. And I can tell you, Meredith, that so I joined the company in 2014, and there was a new CEO that had taken over at that place, and I was one of the first people he hired. And we made a decision at that time that we were going to try to, change the culture and really change the culture from one that was not so positive to one that would, be a performance booster. And so we set out to do that. And in 2015, we were nominated for a Canada's Most Admired Corporate Culture Award, and we didn't make it. So we resubmitted again with feedback. We resubmitted in 2016, and once again we were not recognized as a leading culture. 2017 was the first year that we won the award, and then once you win the award, you can't be nominated again for 2 years, and so you have to wait to that third year to be nominated again. And so we won it in 2020, and we won it in 23. So it is almost 10 years. It's 9 years of having that award-winning culture. And yeah, and the interesting thing, Meredith, is that once you win, you can serve on the board of governors. So basically, for Waterstone, the company that administers these awards, and then you get to be on the panel of people that pick the winners. And so I've read through a lot of submissions that companies submit, and this program has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger over the years. And this past year, when I went to the gala dinner, I couldn't believe how many people and how many companies were there. It seems like everybody's vying for this award now. It's fairly prestigious, but by reading the submissions, what I've understand is that there's a lot of companies that think they know what culture is about, and they're on their journey, but have a ways to go. But it really shows me that having a great culture is a pretty special thing. It's not something that's common. And as I said, there are many companies that are striving and they're doing a lot of good things, but they haven't gotten to that level of where Xperigo is at this point, quite frankly. And I can say that because some of the data, after you've been selected to be a winner of the award, they give you a benchmark report, and that benchmark report shows you kind of where you finished in the judge's eyes against your competitors. And we were in the top of almost every category. And so how you do it, Meredith, is there's 8 categories, if I remember correctly, and there are 8 categories all focused on culture related items, obviously, but more around performance in specific areas of the business. So how did culture help you have a better workforce? How did culture how do you recruit and retain people that are culturally fit? And it just kind of walks through all the stages of your business and how culture, what you do to boost culture, and then how does culture impact that. And that's the real key here, is that you have to take what you do in culture and connect it to performance. It's not just about doing it. You got to do it, and it's got to result in a positive outcome. So, once you and the hard part is each section you only have 500 words. So you got to tell a very concise, impactful story. And anyway, so yeah, the board of governors will judge those. And on a single day in November, usually the board of the governors gets together, reviews all of the submissions, and scores them, and they select their winners. So, there's a lot of awards out there today where you really can just buy the award by paying your entrance fee. This is not one of those. This is one that you've got to earn, because you've got everybody on the board of governors is coming from a company that has a great culture because they've won the award already. So they know what a great culture looks like. And so for you to get recognized with this award it's really an award from your peers saying, yeah, you guys are doing it right.
Yes. You mentioned the hiring part. I would love to know, what is it you look for in a new employee, or a potential employee, that would tell you this person is probably going to be a good fit or not? What are the criteria that you use?
Well, we first thing that we do is we go to market with our tagline or our employment brand, which is "Life is better here," because we want people to understand that by because you're going to hear us talk about culture a lot through the interview process, and we want you to understand there's a reason for that, is because we're trying to create an environment where people like to come to work. I tell the team all the time, everybody's had that job where in the pit of their stomach on a Sunday night, you start feeling bad about Monday morning. We're trying to eliminate that, and we want people to understand that. But in locating the individuals, it's really about we do a lot of talking about our culture and our values. We make sure that through the questioning that we do in the interview process, that we're tapping into what their values are and what they hold dear, to make sure there's a level of alignment. We go through several stages of interviews, and we try to do it very quickly to be respectful of the candidate, give them frequent updates, make sure that those interviews are happening back to back to back, not weeks and months apart like a lot of companies do. I think that's the ultimate in disrespect to a candidate, which starts you off on the wrong foot. And through those panel interviews, so the panel interviews are super important to us, and we have found that to be the kind of the secret sauce. Is first meet with obviously the HR team, and get through their filter, but then come into the team with which you will work. So you'll be talking to individuals that are going to be working with you to make sure that there's a chemistry there, that that they can see that you're a cultural fit. Then there's usually a panel interview with several of the executive team or the leadership team. And again, same thing. We're not really at that point assessing for ability to do the job. We're assessing for the fit to the culture. And we've gotten pretty good at it. We weren't great at it in the beginning, but we've gotten pretty good at it now. And I know that because, Meredith, I meet with every new team member as they join the organization. I make it a priority. I want them to know who I am and that I'm engaged and I care. And it's always very special for them. I don't think I'm special to talk to, but apparently there are people that think it's special that the CEO talked to them. So I think it's great. But I get a chance to share with them right on day one. Here's what we expect from a cultural perspective. It's okay to make mistakes, and it's okay to, for certain things to take place, but you have to make sure that you're doing it with these values at the heart of everything that you do. And we've been pretty good. I have people when I talk to them in the first day or two of being here, they're already saying, through the recruitment process, through the onboarding, and the few days that I've been here, it already feels like family. And it's just because everybody's positive, everybody's wanting this person to be the person that we need, everybody's wanting that person to succeed, and everybody is supporting them in every way that we can. And sometimes it's just really small things that add up to something really important. The idea when you show up for a job, and all those things that you need to do your job are there. You have an email address, you have your laptop, you have all a schedule set for you for the week, so that you know what you need to do to prepare for the job. So many times, Meredith, I would show up on day one of a job and they forgot I was coming. And there's nothing worse than that. So it's that feeling of belonging from day one. And as far as finding that right fit, I think we've gotten that process down pretty. If you put it this way, if you're not a fit to our culture, we can see it pretty quickly after doing it for this many years.
There's so many great lessons from what you've shared, takeaways, to take the time up front to assess the fit rather than jumping in. And your onboarding process, where people feel like they belong from day one, it's huge, because you're right. Too often, there's your desk, there's your whatever. go for it. It's like, person has no idea. So I love that you incorporate the values in there too. I would love to hear you talk about young workers because so many people these days that have been around for a while sometimes complain, sometimes scratch their heads wondering, how do we reach these young workers? What has been your experience in working with younger generation?
Well, my experience has been is that they think very differently than me, and I've had to adapt my thinking because my thinking is a little more antiquated at this point in time. So I'm trying to be very open and flexible. But the key thing that we do is listen. I think through our engagement survey, for one, we get a lot of good feedback. But we also do, as I said, we do stay interviews. I do something called Coffee Chats with Dan, which is just, and I named it that on purpose so that people understand it's a casual conversation, no, hidden agenda that I have. We do these communications so that we can talk to people and understand what's important in their life and how can I help facilitate that without jeopardizing the business. And some of the key things that came forward in doing that and just listening was, after the pandemic, or not after the pandemic, during the pandemic, when we were all working from home, and I was having to decide, are we going back to the office? Or, the same decision every executive team had to make. Um, but the difference was is that I listened, I reached out to various people at all levels of the organization and had a casual conversation to say, what's going on in your life? And what I learned from those conversations, Meredith, was that the pandemic had caused everybody's life to change dramatically in ways that I couldn't even fathom because I'm at a different point in my life. I don't have small kids at home. I've been living in the same house for 30 years. Their situation was very different. This is what I learned. I used to live near the office in Toronto, but I had to move out to Oshawa because I lost daycare during the pandemic. And so I moved beside my parents and there was all these stories and they were all different. And it's younger people, people 20, 25 years younger than me. And what I realized is that, Dan, you can't make a decision based on how I feel about this. I got to make a decision based on what's going to be impactful to them. And we made the decision to not go back into the office. We're flex hybrid, so we spent some time in the office, but we didn't want to. We had people that were not going to be able to commute to the office anymore, and I didn't want to lose these individuals because we have a lot of talent in the business. Had I not listened to all that feedback, I may have made a different decision. Another example that I can give you, Meredith, is in our engagement survey for the last however many years we've been doing it now. The one thing that kept coming up, and this is related directly to the younger generation, is that the only area that we would score low in is that we didn't have a purpose that resonated with them. And think about what we do every day, right? We rescue people out on the road and they're in, either unsafe or inconvenient situations. So already our purpose is, compared to a lot of companies, fairly noble, but the younger generation wants to know that your organization stands for more than profit. And that kept coming up time and time again. And we had different things to focus on back then. But, now listening to that and knowing that I've got to do something about that, we've now started to develop a purpose strategy in the organization. So layered on top of our value-based foundation is now going to be an overarching purpose that hopefully we can align between what we do every day as a company and what we can do for each other and what we can do for other stakeholders in the business and what we can do for the communities in which we live, even in the world potentially. And so, our purpose statement hopefully is going to allow us to all rally behind that. And I know it resonates really big with the younger generation because they all want to work for a company that stands for more than profit. But I think it's going to resonate with everybody because it's going to consolidate us in pushing in one direction with a mission. And I know that that's always a very positive thing. And I can reflect back on the pandemic, Meredith, when I mentioned earlier about how successful we were in that first year or two because of the culture. And I think it's because we all had a purpose to rally around. And the purpose was we have this deadly disease that's taking people out and ruining the economy. And what can we do to not have that happen to us? So let's make sure that we stay healthy and that our family stays healthy and that the company stays healthy. And I saw everybody rally around that purpose, even though it wasn't a purpose that was, specifically communicated to them. But in reflection, that's what happened. They rallied around that single purpose and went above and beyond to make sure that, we achieved what we were trying to do. So then I started thinking about, well, what do we need now that that pandemic isn't the purpose? At least hopefully that never happens again. But what can we do to replace it now and put a different purpose in place that we can all rally around? And so that's how we're going to elevate our culture to an even higher level going forward, is use our values-based organization to achieve things with our purpose statement. And our purpose statement is to elevate the human experience by connecting people to those that can help. This is what my organization does every day, right? I don't go out and tow the car for you, but my organization will connect you to the guy that can. If you need police services or fire or ambulance, and you're out there in your car and you press the button, I can connect you to those services. So we do that in our daily operations. But now we want to do it. If somebody's struggling with mental illness and they work in our company, how can I connect you to the people that can help? If a community is in need and they need something specific like a food bank, or how can we connect you to people that can help? And that's really what we're going to try to do moving forward, is to use that value-based organization to push everybody towards a single purpose that will both benefit the company as a commercial entity, but benefit all our stakeholders in general. So it's a bit ambitious, but I believe it's the way that I get asked all the time, Meredith, Dan, you guys have been so successful for 10 years in having a strong culture, you have nowhere to go but down. And I tell them, well, then maybe you just don't know how high the bar can be raised. And that's how we believe that we can raise the bar higher, is bring purpose into the equation, which we haven't done until now.
Love that, raising the bar. And I admire the fact that this is a work in progress. You're talking about it as a current project, basically, that you don't have it all mapped out. And my guess is you're going to be involving a lot of the different people in the company, just like you did in the creation of the values. You're going to be getting input from everyone about how to make this purpose, this overarching purpose, something that everyone can get behind and buy into.
Yeah, I tell the company all the time, I tell everybody that will hear it, is I'm not the culture. I don't create the culture. I can do things to help facilitate it. You'll hear me talk about it a lot. I'll get everybody to focus on it. That's my job, but I am not the culture. We all are the culture. And so to that end, we've actually recently created something that we call the Culture Council. And the Culture Council is a group of individuals from throughout the organization representing every corner of the company. And their mandate going forward is going to be to bring ideas to me on how can we continue to elevate the culture? What should our purpose be? Where can our purpose be applied? What things should we be doing to continue to drive that strategy forward? So, I'm working very closely, obviously, with my VP of Talent and Culture, who is the executive sponsor of the Culture Council. But we don't want this to come from leadership. We want this to come from the every corner of the organization. Mm-hmm. Leadership obviously needs to walk the walk. I mean, that's the one thing that I remind my team all the time. As leaders, we have to be the example. But I want culture, much like the values story that I told you earlier. I want it to come from everybody. I want everybody to have their fingerprints on it, because then you get immediate, high level of buy-in, and that's what it's going to take to be able to move that bar higher.
Dan, we could talk another hour, I know. I thank you for everything you have shared in this past almost an hour that we've been talking. It's been so enlightening. And I know for my listeners, it's so valuable, because you are, a work in progress yourself. You're a work in progress with your company. And it shows the growth mindset that you and everybody in your company has adopted in order to keep raising the bar. I just love that. Not getting complacent, not feeling, oh, we've arrived, we're set. It's that continuous growing, learning, expanding. And of course, that's one of your values, is learning no more. And right. So I want to thank you for joining me today and for sharing everything about your journey, about your work there, and all the amazing things that you're doing. It's I'm glad to have the opportunity and the platform to be able to help spread the word about your good work.
Well, you're right, Meredith. I could talk for another hour or longer, but I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thanks for tuning in to my podcast. Now head over to growstrongleaders.com and check out our 2 books, Connect with Your Team and Peer Coaching Made Simple. While you're there, download the free facilitator guide to find out how to implement our unique peer coaching system. Until next time, I'm Meredith Bell.